Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this important hearing. I want to thank all our witnesses for your excellent testimony here today. And Ms. Woods, I want to especially thank you and Charlie for being here and offering your testimonial, because your words echo so loudly in my mind. I had a similar family who reached out shortly after passage of the Affordable Care Act just to thank me for my support and my vote on that bill. And the mother, Beth Verstel, told me their story, that before the Affordable Care Act and before she delivered her little boy Henry, he suffered a seizure in her womb, and therefore, the very first breath that he took in his life, he was uninsurable because he had a pre-existing condition. And that young family was depleting their entire life savings and resources to make sure that Henry was getting the health care that he needed to stay alive. And they knew that with passage of the Affordable Care Act, that protection now was in place for her little boy, for that family. And they went out of the way to thank us. And nothing was more heartbreaking than, as a member of Congress about a year and a half ago, when the other side was trying to push through their so-called health care reform bill that would have kicked 25 million Americans off from their health care system and would have given $800 billion worth of tax cuts to the drug and insurance companies. Then getting phone calls from families with young children who were scared out of their mind that the protection for pre-existing condition was going to be taken away from their little daughter or their little boy, and to field those phone calls and to hear that fear in their voices. And I'm sure all of us on this side of the dais, at least, will pledge to you today that we will do everything in our power to stop this federal lawsuit in Texas from moving forward and taking away the guaranteed protection that little Charlie has today because of the passage of the Affordable Care Act. We won't rest until that is defeated. And unfortunately, President Trump ordered his administration to be a party of that lawsuit, to take those protections away from Americans today. It's outrageous. Ms. Turner, I'm sure you're familiar with the passage of the Part D prescription drug bill that happened about 2004. Could you tell us what revenue sources were used back then to pay for it? What taxes went up to pay for that legislation?
I know that the cost was $400 billion. I don't believe that there were new taxes raised to pay for that.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. We had the largest expansion of Medicare funding since the passage of the Medicare Act itself in 1965, and not one nickel was found to offset. Not one penny was raised to pay for it. So you can understand today that when we get a Republican witness and when we hear from our Republican colleagues, the crocodile tears of, oh, this is going to be too expensive, how are we going to pay for it, taxes are going up, when they're so disingenuous on their side, passing a major expansion of Medicare without paying for it at all. And can you explain to us why it's been so difficult under that bill for the federal government to be able to negotiate better prescription drug prices for our patients as we do under the VA healthcare system?
Well, as you know, this is one of the most popular programs in the country. And
Let me answer in case you're not familiar. The reason why we haven't been more successful in negotiating because they put language in that bill specifically prohibiting, making it illegal for us to discuss price with the drug companies, let alone not paying for any of it. So you can understand why some of us back then had a problem supporting that measure when it did come up for a vote, my ranking member. Mr. Berwick, let me turn to you because my time is very limited, but there was a recent article in the Washington Post dated April 29th of this year titled, "Why Vermont's Single-Payer Effort Failed and What Democrats Can Learn from It." And Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to have that included in the record.
So ordered.
In that article, the then Governor Pete Shumlin was quoted and by saying, and I quote, "What I learned the hard way is it isn't just about reforming the broken payment system. Public financing will not work until you get costs under control," end quote. I would add to that statement that the private healthcare system isn't going to work very well until we get costs under control. Under the Affordable Care Act, we tried to throw a lot of cost containment measures in that. Can you tell us what's been successful, what more we need to be doing in order to bring these costs under control so whatever system we end up with will be affordable?
Under the Affordable Care Act, you gave the CMS the authority to push back on hospitals on unnecessary cost increases. There were penalties attached to underperformance. You created rewards for safer care and penalties for less safe care. You progressed, although this administration has stopped it, the lessons from the durable medical equipment bidding structure. We have a proven experiment with durable medical equipment bidding, which would have saved over a 10-year period $27 billion in the trust fund and over $10 billion for out-of-pocket payments for Medicare beneficiaries. That was well underway to national expansion under the Affordable Care Act. This administration has stopped that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.